What if I told you that every lottery ticket you've ever bought was actually worthless, and the real winning ticket has been sitting inside you all along waiting to be activated? Now, before you dismiss this as another motivational cliche, I want you to answer something with complete honesty. How many times have you stood in line, holding a ticket in your hands while a small voice whispered in the back of your mind that you probably won't win? How many times have you handed over your money, feeling more doubt than certainty, more hope than conviction? You see, what you're about to discover has nothing to do with lucky numbers, special dates, or good luck charms. This goes much deeper than anything you've been taught about manifestation or the law of attraction. This is about something Florence Scovel Shinn understood almost a century ago. Something that transformed the lives of thousands of people who were exactly where you are right now, standing at the intersection between the life they have and the life they know is possible. Your arrival here to this exact moment, watching this video, wasn't an accident. Has this ever happened to you? You think intensely about something, and then suddenly it appears in your life, as if the universe heard your silent request. Maybe you've experienced those strange coincidences that feel too perfect to be random. Those moments when everything aligns in ways you can't quite explain. What if I told you those aren't coincidences at all, but rather small glimpses of a much larger law that's constantly operating in your life, whether you're aware of it or not? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's what most people don't understand about winning the lottery or attracting any form of abundance for that matter. The ticket itself is meaningless. It's just paper and ink. What gives it power? What determines whether you win or lose isn't the numbers printed on it. It's the state of consciousness you're holding while that ticket sits in your pocket. Stay with me until the end, because this distinction is everything, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The reality is that something inside your consciousness is already shifting right now. You may have felt it for weeks, months, or even years. This knowing that there's a different way to approach life, a different frequency you could tune into if you only knew how. Most people go their entire lives sensing this truth, but never fully grasping it, never learning how to harness it. But you're here, which means you're ready for something different. You're ready to understand that your inner world, your thoughts, your assumptions, your deepest beliefs about who you are, doesn't just influence your outer experiences. It creates them completely and absolutely. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because it challenges everything you've been taught about effort, worthiness, and the right way to attract abundance. The lottery ticket you've been searching for isn't hiding in convenience stores or online platforms. It's been waiting inside your own consciousness this entire time. And once you learn how to claim it, the reason most people never experience that life-changing win isn't because they're unlucky or because the universe has favorites. It's because they've fundamentally misunderstood what winning actually is. They see it as luck, pure random luck. They believe it's about being in the right place at the right time, about the cosmic dice rolling in their favor for once. And this belief, as innocent as it sounds, is precisely the invisible prison that keeps millions trapped in an exhausting cycle of hope and disappointment week after week, year after year. Think about it. When you believe that winning is entirely outside your control, just a matter of chance, what are you really saying to yourself? You're declaring that you're powerless, that your fate is in the hands of random probability, that all you can do is keep trying and hoping that maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. That mindset itself is what blocks the very thing you're seeking. It's not the lottery that's keeping you from winning. It's the way you've been taught to think about winning. Florence Scovel Shinn discovered something revolutionary in her work. Something that goes against everything our logical minds want to believe. She understood that God, the universe, divine intelligence, whatever name resonates with you, doesn't send random signals into the void hoping someone catches them. That's not how the spiritual laws operate. Instead, what happens is far more precise, far more personal, and far more empowering than most people realize. The universe sends confirmations to those who have reached a specific state of receptivity, not luck confirmations. If this resonates with you, subscribe to the channel. This is where we explore the real mechanics of consciousness and manifestation. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because this is where the real transformation begins. When Shinn talks about receptivity, she's not talking about being open-minded or having good intentions. She's talking about something much more concrete: assumption. This is the language the universe actually speaks and responds to. Not your wishes, not your desperate prayers, not your positive affirmations, repeated 1,000 times while you secretly doubt they'll work. Assumption is the frequency on which divine law operates. And until you understand how to tune into that frequency, you're essentially broadcasting on a channel that nobody's listening to. Here's what assumption really means in practice. It's not about pretending or faking it until you make it. It's about accepting something as true in the deepest part of your being without negotiation, without that little voice saying, "But what if it doesn't work?" When you assume something, you're not hoping for it or wishing for it. You're operating as if it's already decided, already done, already yours. And that internal shift, that decision you make in the privacy of your own consciousness, is what sends the signal that the universe can actually respond to. If this is starting to click for you, if you're beginning to see your situation from a completely different angle, write in the comments, "I'm ready to shift my assumption." When you truly assume something is real in your internal world, when you accept it without that constant back and forth debate in your mind, something remarkable happens. External reality doesn't gradually shift or slowly adjust. It reorganizes itself instantaneously to mirror that internal truth. This isn't mysticism or wishful thinking. You've already experienced this law working in your life. You just haven't recognized it for what it is. Those moments when you think intensely about someone and within minutes they call you. That gut feeling you had about something that turned out to be exactly right. The decision you made that seemed to unlock a series of perfectly timed events. These aren't coincidences or lucky breaks. They're small glimpses of a massive law that's operating constantly, whether you're paying attention or not. The real revelation here, the one that changes the entire game, is understanding that this law doesn't play favorites and it doesn't require you to be special. It's mechanical, impersonal, precise. It responds to one thing and one thing only. What you've accepted is true in the hidden depths of your being. Not what you say you believe. Not what you tell other people you're manifesting. Not even what you think you believe. What you've actually accepted in that quiet place where nobody else can see, where you're completely honest with yourself. This brings us to perhaps the most important shift in perspective you'll ever make about winning the lottery or attracting any significant change in your life. The ticket you're searching for, the one you think will change everything, isn't sitting in a store waiting for you to find it. It's not a physical object at all. The real lottery ticket is a decision, a single, definitive decision you make in the core of your being. It's that precise moment when something inside you stops waiting for external permission, stops looking for signs that you're allowed to win, stops wondering if this time might finally be different. It's the instant you recognize that the victory has already happened in the own dimension where it truly matters, your consciousness. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for the outer world to change first, to give them proof that they can relax and believe. They want to see the money before they feel wealthy, see the win before they feel like a winner, see the transformation before they shift their identity. But that's exactly backwards. That's the journey in reverse. The outer world is not the creator. It's the mirror. It can only reflect back what you're projecting from within. When you're projecting doubt, uncertainty, and the belief that good things happen to other people, but probably not to you, that's precisely what gets mirrored back over again in an endless loop that feels like bad luck, but is actually perfect responsiveness to your inner state. The decision I'm talking about isn't emotional. It's not getting excited or pumped up or trying to convince yourself through sheer willpower. It's deeper than that. It's a quiet knowing, a settling into a truth that feels so natural you stop questioning it. It's the difference between hoping you'll win and knowing that what's yours is already making its way to you. And that difference, invisible as it may seem, is everything. If you're recognizing this pattern in your own life right now, write in the comments. My consciousness is the real ticket. Here's something that will probably challenge everything you've been taught about how to achieve success or attract what you want. It's not about how many tickets you buy. It's not about how hard you work, how fervently you pray, or how many hours you spend visualizing. What actually determines your results is something far more subtle and far more powerful. The internal state from which you're taking those actions. You could buy a 100 lotteries from a place of desperation, from that anxious energy of please let this work. I really need this. And all you're doing is generating more of the exact same frequency that's been keeping you stuck. But you could buy a single ticket from a state of deep acceptance, from that calm knowing that what's meant for you is already on its way. And everything shifts in that moment. This is where most people get trapped without even realizing it. They assume that success is about doing more, trying harder, being more disciplined, pushing through resistance. We've been conditioned since childhood to believe that everything worthwhile requires struggle. That if it comes easily, it probably isn't real or lasting. But that entire framework is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of how reality actually works. Life doesn't respond to effort in the same way it responds to assumption. These are two completely different operating systems, and most people are trying to run consciousness software on a material world machine. Effort belongs to the world of physical matter, where everything appears solid and resistant, where you have to push and pull and manipulate things into place. That's a valid dimension of experience, but it's not where creation happens. Creation happens in consciousness, and consciousness operates by entirely different rules. Consciousness doesn't care how much sweat you've produced or how exhausted you are from trying. It only responds to what you've assumed to be true. When you're straining and struggling, what you're really doing is broadcasting a signal that says, "This is hard. This requires force. This isn't natural for me." And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects that exact frequency back to you by making everything feel like an uphill battle. The most successful people, the ones who seem to have luck on their side, aren't necessarily working harder than everyone else. What they've done, consciously or unconsciously, is shifted their internal assumption about what's possible for them. They've moved from operating in the realm of effort to operating in the realm of assumption. They've stopped trying to force outcomes and started allowing outcomes to flow from who they've decided to be. This isn't about being passive or lazy. It's about understanding where real power actually lies. Real power doesn't come from your muscles or your willpower. It comes from your consciousness, from what you've deeply accepted as true about yourself and your relationship with abundance. The transformation happens the moment you stop treating winning as something you have to chase down and conquer, and start treating it as something that's already decided, already done in the invisible realm, just waiting for the physical world to catch up. If you're starting to see the difference between pushing and allowing, write in the comments, "I choose assumption over effort." When you feel that tension in your chest, that anxiety that whispers, "I have to make this work," you're actually doing something far more significant than you realize. You're sending out a very specific signal to the universe. A declaration that's incredibly clear, even though you never spoke it aloud. That signal says there is distance between me and what I want. There is separation. What I desire is over there and I am over here. And I need to somehow bridge that gap through sheer force of will. And here's the cruel paradox that keeps so many people stuck. That very vibration of struggle, that frequency of lack and separation, is precisely the energy that repels what you're trying to attract. It's like trying to pull a magnet closer while holding another magnet with the same pole facing it. The harder you push, the stronger the resistance becomes. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is about understanding something much deeper about how reality construction actually works. What you experience in your daily life, the wins, the losses, the opportunities that appear, the doors that close, none of it is random. It's not the product of chance or some capricious external force deciding your fate on a whim. What you're living through right now is the direct result of God, universal intelligence, creative consciousness, whatever language resonates with you, acting through your imagination, not through some distant deity making decisions about you from far away, but through you and you as you. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this with crystal clarity. She saw that God isn't separate from your experience, watching from above and occasionally intervening. God is operating through every thought you think, every mental image you hold, every feeling you cultivate in the privacy of your inner world. Your imagination isn't just an entertainment feature of your mind, something you use to daydream or pass the time. It's the actual mechanism through which divine creative power expresses itself in your individual life. When you imagine something with genuine feeling, when you assume the sensation of your desire already fulfilled, you're not playing make-believe. You're participating in the fundamental act of creation itself. This is where most people completely miss the point. They think imagination is about escaping reality, about pretending things are different than they are. But imagination is how you build reality. Every single thing you see around you right now, the device you're watching this on, the building you're in, the clothes you're wearing, existed first as an image in someone's consciousness before it became physical. Nothing appears in the material world without first being imagined, assumed, and accepted as possible in the realm of consciousness. The same principle applies to your financial situation, your relationships, your health, your wins and losses. They're all reflections of what's been operating in your imagination, consciously or unconsciously. The breakthrough happens when you stop using your imagination by default, letting it replay fears and doubts on an endless loop, and start using it deliberately to assume the feeling of what you actually want to experience. Not hoping for it, not wishing it would happen someday, assuming it as already true, already done, already yours in the dimension that matters most. If this understanding is landing differently for you now, write in the comments. My imagination creates my reality. Your imagination is not a recreational feature of your mind, something you use when you're bored or want to escape from the demands of daily life. It's far more significant than that. Your imagination is the actual workshop where future realities are forged, where the invisible becomes visible, where the formless takes form. Think of it as the backstage of your life, the hidden place where everything is designed, constructed, and prepared before it steps onto the visible stage of your physical experience. Every single event you'll experience tomorrow, next week, next year is being shaped right now in the workshop of your imagination. Whether you're directing that process consciously or letting it run on autopilot. When you imagine something with genuine conviction, with that feeling of yes, this is real, you're not daydreaming or wasting time. You're actively participating in divine creation itself. You're using the same creative mechanism that brought entire galaxies into existence, that designed the intricate complexity of a single cell, that orchestrates the perfect timing of seasons. That power isn't reserved for some special few. It's flowing through you constantly, expressing itself through the images and feelings you hold in your consciousness. The question isn't whether you're creating with your imagination. You are, every single moment. The question is whether you're creating consciously or unconsciously, deliberately or by default. Now, here's where this gets really interesting, where the full impact of this understanding hits you. When you truly assume something is real in your internal world, when you accept it without conditions or qualifications, something extraordinary happens in that exact instant. You don't gradually move closer to what you desire over weeks or months. You immediately collapse the separation between and what you want, immediately. Not tomorrow. Not after you've done enough work or proven yourself worthy. Right now, in the moment of acceptance. This goes against everything our logical minds want to believe, because we're so conditioned to think in terms of linear time and step-by-step processes. But consciousness doesn't work that way. Consciousness operates outside of time. In the realm of consciousness, the moment you accept something as true, the creative act is already complete. It's done, finished. What happens afterward in the physical world is not the creation happening. It's the revelation of what's already been created. It's the material dimension catching up with the decision you made in consciousness. Think of it like planting a seed. The moment that seed touches fertile soil, growth has already begun. Even though you can't see anything happening on the surface, the invisible process is already in motion and nothing can stop it except digging up the seed through doubt and interference. This is why some people can make a single decision and their entire life shifts, while others work for years without seeing meaningful change. It's not about who works harder or who's more deserving. It's about who has learned to operate at the level of assumption rather than just action. Who understands that real transformation happens in consciousness first and manifestation second. If you're beginning to grasp how instantaneous this process really is, write in the comments. The shift happens now, not later. The way God or universal creative intelligence actually operates in your life is completely different from what most people have been taught. It doesn't function through repetitive work, through grinding away for hours, through constant vigilant attention, where you're always monitoring and managing every detail. That's the human way, the way we've been conditioned to approach everything. But divine intelligence works through something far simpler and far more powerful: acceptance. It's that singular moment of internal stillness where something deep inside you just says, yes, this is mine. Without any debate, without that exhausting back and forth argument your mind usually runs. There's no negotiation, no convincing yourself, no mental gymnastics, just pure acceptance. And in that acceptance, everything shifts. Here's the paradox that confuses almost everyone. And if you've been stuck in this pattern, you'll recognize it immediately. The people who struggle the most, who work the longest hours, who try strategy after strategy after strategy, are often the ones who see the least actual movement in their lives. They're doing everything right according to conventional wisdom. They're taking massive action, staying busy, never giving up, and yet nothing seems to break through. Meanwhile, there are others who make quiet decisions without all the drama, without the desperate energy, and suddenly their entire reality reorganizes itself. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. The right people show up at the right time. Money flows in through unexpected channels. From the outside looking in, it seems unfair, like some people just have better luck. But from the perspective of consciousness, it makes perfect sense. The ones who are struggling are broadcasting a frequency of lack of "I don't have it yet" and "I need to fight to get it." Every action they take is soaked in that energy of separation and desperation. The universe isn't punishing them for working hard. It's simply reflecting back the exact vibration they're emitting. The ones who experience those sudden breakthroughs aren't necessarily doing less work, but they're doing it from a completely different internal state. They've already accepted the win in consciousness. They're operating from a place of "it's already mine. I'm just allowing it to materialize." That's an entirely different signal, and it produces entirely different results. This is the hidden truth behind every major transformation you've ever witnessed or experienced yourself. The shift doesn't happen because of accumulated effort finally reaching some magic threshold. The shift happens because at some point, consciously or unconsciously, acceptance replaces resistance. The fighting stops, the striving relaxes, and there's this moment of inner surrender where you stop trying to make it happen and start allowing it to happen. And in that allowing, in that space of non-resistance, the universe can finally deliver what's been waiting for you all along. The blockage was never external. It was always your own internal state of tension and struggle. If you're recognizing this pattern in your own journey right now, write in the comments, "I release the struggle and accept what's mine." What determines absolutely everything that happens in your life isn't your education, your background, your current circumstances, or even how hard you work. It's something far more fundamental. The assumption you maintain about who you are, not who you wish you were or who you're trying to become, who you actually assume yourself to be in that quiet, unguarded place where your truest beliefs live. If you assume at your core that you're someone who always wins, someone life naturally favors, someone for whom money flows easily, and opportunities appear regularly, then events and circumstances have no choice but to conform to that assumption. They must. It's not optional. Your identity is like a magnet that pulls toward you only experiences that match its frequency. Most people have this backwards. They think identity is formed by their experiences. I am unlucky because unlucky things keep happening to me. But that's the effect trying to explain the cause. Your identity came first operating quietly in the background, and your experiences are simply confirming what you've already decided about yourself. When you shift your identity at the deepest level, when you genuinely start seeing yourself as someone who wins, who succeeds, who attracts abundance naturally, the external world has to reorganize itself to match that new internal reality. It's not magic, it's mechanics. Now, here's something that will either liberate you or frustrate you depending on how you receive it. The law that governs all of this, the principle behind manifestation, and is completely impersonal, completely exact. It operates with the precision of mathematics. It doesn't have favorites. It doesn't care if you're a good person or a bad person, moral or immoral, deserving or undeserving. It doesn't reward virtue, and it doesn't punish doubt. It simply reflects with perfect accuracy what you consistently assume. That's all it does. And it does it flawlessly every single time. This impersonality is actually the most empowering aspect of the entire system. Even though it might not feel that way at first, it means you don't have to earn anything. You don't have to prove yourself worthy. You don't have to wait for some external authority to decide you've finally done enough to deserve success. The law doesn't consult probability statistics, doesn't check lottery odds, doesn't review your past failures before deciding whether to grant you a win. It only responds to one thing: what feels natural and true to you internally. If winning feels natural to you, if abundance feels like your normal state, if success feels like just another Tuesday rather than some miraculous exception, then that's what the law delivers. Not because you've manipulated it or tricked it, but because that's literally its only function: to reflect your dominant assumptions. The challenge is that most people don't realize they're walking around with assumptions they never consciously chose. Assumptions they inherited from parents, absorbed from culture, adopted from past disappointments. And those unexamined assumptions are running the show, determining outcomes, shaping experiences, all while operating completely beneath conscious awareness. The transformation begins the moment you bring those assumptions into the light and make a deliberate choice about which ones you're going to accept as true. If you're ready to consciously chew identity instead of inheriting it by default, write in the comments, "I decide who I am," and life responds. Your true identity is what creates your reality, not your wishes, not your hopes, not your desperate attempts to force things into place. And here's the real question, the one that cuts through all the confusion and gets straight to the heart of the matter. It's not whether you'll win the lottery. That's the wrong question entirely. The real question is, who are you being while you're buying that ticket? Are you showing up as someone who's hoping, fearfully, crossing your fingers, and silently begging the universe for a break? Or are you someone who knows deep in your bones that your good is already on its way, that this ticket is simply one possible channel through which what's yours can arrive? That difference in being, in identity, in how you show up energetically, that's what determines everything. Most people never get this far because they get stuck in a trap that looks productive but leads nowhere. They confuse assumption with positive thinking, and that confusion keeps them running in circles for years. They repeat affirmations 100 times a day, plaster their walls with vision boards, force themselves to smile and stay upbeat even when everything inside them is screaming doubt. And when nothing changes, they blame themselves for not being positive enough, for not believing hard enough, for not doing the techniques correctly. But the problem was never their effort. It was that they were working with the wrong tool entirely. Positive thinking is superficial by nature. It's like taking a wall that has deep structural cracks, running through it and deciding to solve the problem by painting over it with bright, cheerful colors. Sure, it looks better temporarily, but the foundation is still compromised, and eventually those cracks are going to show through no matter how many coats of paint you apply. Positive thinking operates at the surface level of your mind, trying to override what's happening in the depths. And that's why it fails so consistently for so many people. You can think positive thoughts all day long, but if underneath those thoughts there's a bedrock belief that says good things don't happen to people like me, or I'm just not that lucky, then the bedrock wins every single time. Assumption is something entirely different. It's not surface-level mental activity. It's a deep agreement made in the foundational layers of your being. It's a decision that doesn't need to be reinforced constantly because it's not sitting on top of doubt trying to cover it up. It's replaced the doubt entirely. When you truly assume something, there's no internal conflict about it. You're not trying to convince yourself it's true while secretly knowing it might not be. You've accepted it as true in the same way you accept that gravity exists. It's just a given, a settled fact that doesn't require constant verification or affirmation. This distinction between positive thinking and true assumption is absolutely critical because one exhausts you with constant effort while producing minimal results, and the other requires almost no effort at all once it's established yet produces consistent, reliable transformation. The journey isn't about thinking more positive thoughts. It's about shifting the fundamental assumptions that operate beneath all your thoughts. If you're starting to see the difference between covering up doubt and actually replacing it, write in the comments. I'm ready for real assumption, not just positive thinking. Your subconscious mind, that powerful operating system running beneath your conscious awareness, doesn't respond to the words you anxiously repeat to yourself, hoping they'll magically take effect. It doesn't care how many times you say an affirmation, or how loud you say it, or how much emotion you try to pump into it. What your subconscious actually responds to are the conclusions you've accepted in silence. Those deep internal truths that don't even need to be articulated because they've become part of the fundamental way you perceive the world. They're the assumptions so natural to you that you don't even notice them anymore, like the air you breathe. And those silent conclusions are running your life with far more power than any conscious statement you could ever make. This is why two people can say the exact same affirmation with the exact same words, and one person sees their life transform while the other sees nothing change at all. The difference isn't in the words. It's in what's happening beneath the words. One person is speaking words that align with their silent conclusions. So there's no internal conflict, no resistance, just a smooth flow of creative energy. The other person is speaking words that contradict their silent conclusions, creating this exhausting internal war where the surface-level statements are constantly being undermined by deeper beliefs they haven't even acknowledged. Here's something most people never realize about the creative process, about how manifestation actually works in practical terms. Effort creates noise. That constant striving, that anxious pushing, that urgent need to make things happen. It generates this mental cacophony of doubts, questions, fears, and competing urgencies, all screaming for attention at once. Your mind becomes this chaotic battlefield where nothing can settle, nothing can take root, nothing can grow. And in all that noise, all that internal commotion, creation becomes nearly impossible, because creation doesn't happen in chaos. Creation happens in stillness. Assumption, when it's genuine and complete, creates silence, not the silence of giving up or the silence of suppression, but the silence of resolution. It's that profound quiet that settles over your inner world when something has been decided, when there's nothing left to debate or worry about or figure out. It's the empty space where internal conflict used to be. And that space, that silence, is where true creation occurs. It's in that stillness where God or universal intelligence or creative consciousness, whatever term, makes sense to you. You can act without obstruction. Think of it like trying to hear a subtle signal on a radio while someone's running a jackhammer next to you. The signal is always broadcasting, but you can't receive it through all the noise. When the noise stops, suddenly the signal comes through crystal clear. The transformation from noise to silence isn't about forcing your mind to be quiet or suppressing your thoughts through sheer willpower. It's about resolving the internal conflicts that create the noise in the first place. When you truly assume something, when you accept it so completely that there's no part of you arguing against it anymore, the silence happens naturally. The questions stop, the doubts dissolve, the urgency relaxes, and in that peaceful internal environment, things begin to move in ways that felt impossible when your mind was full of static. If you're beginning to notice where you've been creating noise instead of silence in your own mind, write in the comments. I choose the creative power of silence. When you look at how creation actually happens in spiritual texts, in the fundamental stories about how reality comes into being, there's something striking you'll notice if you pay attention. When the Bible describes God creating light, it doesn't paint a picture of effort or struggle or God working hard to make it happen. There's no description of multiple attempts, no trial and error, no exhausting process. It simply says, "Let there be light," and there was light. Declaration and manifestation happening in the same breath. God simply is. There's no conflict, no doubt, no tortuous journey from wanting to having. Just pure being, pure creative power expressing itself through assumption and acceptance. And here's what changes everything when you really let this sink in. When you truly assume something, when you accept it as already true without that internal argument, you're imitating exactly that divine nature that lives within you. You're not trying to become like God. You're recognizing that the same creative principle that operates through all of existence is operating through you right now, in this moment, through your consciousness. The only difference between someone who experiences consistent wins and someone who stays stuck in lack is that one has learned to speak the language of divine creation, while the other is still speaking the language of human struggle. This brings us to something that will completely shift how you think about buying lottery tickets or taking any action toward what you want. The lottery, like absolutely any other manifestation in your life, doesn't actually respond to the action itself. It responds to the state from which you're taking that action. The ticket in your hand has no inherent power whatsoever. It's literally just a piece of paper with numbers printed on it. Those numbers aren't magic. They're not choosing anything. They're not making decisions. The state from which you're holding that ticket, the consciousness you're embodying while you possess it, that's where the real power lies. Numbers don't decide anything. Probability doesn't decide anything. Statistics are completely irrelevant. Consciousness decides everything. You could buy 100 tickets from a state of desperation, from that anxious energy of please let this be the one. And all you're doing is reinforcing the exact vibration that keeps winning away from you. But you could buy one single ticket from a state of calm knowing, from that internal certainty that says what's mine is already moving toward me, And this is simply one possible avenue. And everything changes in that moment. The external action looks the same to anyone watching. But the internal reality, the state, the consciousness, the assumption is completely different. And that internal difference is what creates different external results. This is why you can see people win who barely play, while others play religiously for years and never hit anything significant. It has nothing to do with fairness or luck or odds. It has everything to do with the state they're in when they engage with the game. One is playing from assumption, from that place of I am someone who wins. The other is playing from hope, from that place of maybe this time I'll finally get lucky. Same action, completely different frequency, completely different outcome. If you're understanding that your state of consciousness is the actual lottery ticket, write in the comments, my state creates my wins, not my actions. When assumption finally replaces effort in your life, when you make that fundamental shift from pushing to allowing, something remarkable happens with time itself. It stops being this implacable tyrant that always seems to work against you. This force that makes everything take forever while you're desperately waiting for your breakthrough. Florence Scovel Shinn had a beautiful way of describing what happens next. She called it the bridge of incidents. It's this perfectly synchronized sequence of events that unfolds naturally, leading you from exactly where you are right now to precisely where you want to be. Not through force, not through grinding yourself down with endless effort, but through a kind of divine choreography, where the right people, the right opportunities, the right moments all align with seemingly effortless timing. You've probably experienced glimpses of this in your own life. Those periods where everything just seemed to flow, where doors opened before you even knocked, where solutions appeared right when you needed them. That wasn't luck or random chance. That was the bridge of incidents operating in response to your internal state. The challenge is that most people only experience this sporadically in brief windows because they keep reverting back to effort and struggle instead of maintaining the state of assumption that allows the bridge to fully form and carry them across. Now, here's a distinction that will fundamentally change how you approach not just the lottery, but any desire you hold. The lottery doesn't respond to hope. It responds to identity. Most people completely miss this crucial difference, and it keeps them stuck in a pattern that feels productive but leads nowhere. Hope sounds positive, right? It sounds optimistic and forward-thinking. But when you really examine what hope is, you realize it's actually a confession of separation. When you're hoping for something, what you're really saying, even if you don't consciously realize it, is that this thing exists somewhere else, far away from you, beyond your current reach. Hope is you looking at something from the outside, wishing you could get access to it, wondering if maybe, possibly someday, it might come to you. Identity is completely different. Identity isn't looking at something from a distance. It's being it from the inside. When your identity shifts to I am someone who wins. You're not hoping to become that person in the future. You're not wishing you could be that fortunate. You already are. It's a present tense reality, not a future tense possibility. And the universe, which responds to what you are, rather than what you hope to become, can only deliver experiences that match your current identity. If you identify as lucky, as favored, as someone life supports and blesses, then winning isn't some extraordinary event that would shock you. It's just another expression of who you already are. It's natural, expected, normal. This is why some people win multiple times while others never win at all despite playing consistently for decades. It's not about fairness or mathematical probability. It's about identity. The person who wins repeatedly has an identity that says, "I'm someone this happens to." The person who never wins has an identity that says, "I'm not that lucky." Things like that don't happen to people like me. Both identities are being perfectly reflected back through their external experiences. And both people are unconsciously proving themselves right over and over again. If you're ready to shift from hoping you'll win to knowing you're someone who wins, write in the comments. My identity is winner, not wisher. Hope speaks the language of uncertainty. Even when you're trying to sound positive, even when you're saying the words with enthusiasm, there's this underlying vibration that's constantly whispering maybe. Maybe this time. Maybe if I'm lucky. Maybe if I do everything right. That uncertainty, that tentative quality is woven into the very fabric of hope. And the universe picks up on that signal with perfect accuracy. Identity, on the other hand, speaks an entirely different language. It says, of course, with the absolute tranquility of someone who knows exactly who they are. There's no question mark at the end of that statement. There's no need to convince yourself or anyone else. It's just a simple recognition of what's true. Of course, this happens to me. Of course, things work out in my favor. Of course, abundance finds me. And when you operate from that place of identity rather than hope, you're not trying to become something or attract something from outside yourself. You simply are. And the world responds to that state of being with experiences that are perfectly coherent with it. Here's where this gets really practical, where you can see exactly why this works the way it does. When you identify as a winner, not hope to become one, not wish you were one, but genuinely identify as one right now, you're placing victory in the present tense. It's not something that will occur in some distant future, if everything aligns just right. It's something that's already occurring through your very way of being. This isn't semantic wordplay or positive psychology tricks. This is about how your subconscious mind actually functions. And this is critically important to understand because your subconscious is the engine driving your manifestations. Your subconscious mind can only create from present assumptions. It cannot create from future possibilities. It doesn't matter how vividly you imagine something happening next year, or how intensely you want something to manifest eventually. Your subconscious only works with what is now, with what you're accepting as true in this present moment. When you say, "I will be lucky someday," your subconscious hears that as "I am not lucky now," and it creates from that present assumption of lack. But when you say, and more importantly, when you genuinely feel "I am lucky, I am favored, I am someone who wins," your subconscious that present tense identity and begins orchestrating your reality to match it. This is why people who are always talking about their future success often stay stuck exactly where they are, while people who speak from their current identity as successful, even before they have external proof, start seeing their circumstances shift rapidly. The difference isn't in what they want. Both want success. The difference is in the tense they're operating from. One is creating from future hope, which keeps the desire perpetually out of reach. The other is creating from present identity, which collapses the distance instantly and allows manifestation to flow. Think about how you naturally interact with things you already have, things you already are. You don't hope you're tall if you're tall. You just are. You don't wish you had your name. You just have it. There's no drama, no effort, no desperate energy around these things because they're settled facts of your present identity. That's the exact energy you need to bring a winning, to abundance, to whatever you're trying to manifest. Not future-focused longing, but present tense recognition. If you're starting to catch yourself speaking from future hope and ready to shift into present identity, write in the comments, I am, not I will be. That knowing, that genuine recognition of who you are and what's yours feels completely different from desire. It's calm. It's powerful in a quiet way. It's stable like bedrock that doesn't shift with changing circumstances. There's no anxiety woven into it because there's no perceived distance between you and what you know. When you know something, really know it, you don't lie awake at night wondering if it's true. You don't check in on it every few hours to make sure it's still valid. You just know the same way you know your own name. And that knowing carries a weight and a certainty that desire simply cannot match. This is why divine law, universal principle, the creative force behind all manifestation, whatever term resonates with you, responds to what you're being, not what you're desiring. You can desire something with every fiber of your being. You can want it so intensely it hurts. You can think about it constantly and visualize it in vivid detail. But if your fundamental identity, that deep unconscious story about who you are, isn't aligned with that desire, you're essentially trying to push a boulder off with your bare hands. You might move it a few inches through sheer determination, but the moment you stop pushing, it rolls right back down. That's exhausting and it's completely unnecessary once you understand how to work with identity instead of against it. Identity is the deepest, most powerful form of assumption you can hold, because it's not something you do occasionally, like a technique you practice for 20 minutes a day. It's something you are constantly all the time, even when you're not thinking about it. It's the story you tell yourself about yourself without needing words, without conscious articulation. It's running in the background of your consciousness like an operating system, interpreting every experience through its lens, making decisions about what's possible for you and what isn't, determining what feels natural and what feels foreign. This is the invisible posture of your consciousness, and it's operating with full power whether you're paying attention to it or not. Most people go their entire lives without ever consciously examining their identity, without ever questioning the story they've been telling themselves since childhood. They inherited beliefs from their parents about what people like them can achieve. They absorb messages from their culture about their limitations and possibilities. They formed conclusions based on early failures that became permanent fixtures of their self-concept. And all of that accumulated conditioning is running the show, making decisions about what gets to enter their life and what doesn't. Completely beneath the surface of conscious awareness. This is why someone can do all the manifestation techniques perfectly, can follow every instruction, can maintain positive thoughts and speak affirmations and visualize their desires, and still see no real change. The techniques are operating at the surface level, but their identity, that deep unconscious assumption about who they are, is operating at a much more fundamental level. And when there's conflict between the two, the deeper programming always wins. It's not that the techniques don't work, it's that they're being overridden by an identity that says, "This isn't for people like me." The real transformation begins when you stop trying to layer new beliefs on top of an old identity and instead do the deeper work of actually shifting who you understand yourself to be at the core. When your identity changes, everything else adjusts automatically because you're no longer fighting against yourself. If you're recognizing that your identity has been running silently in the background this whole time, write in the comments, "I see my identity now and I'm choosing to rewrite it." The outer world doesn't define who you are. That's the illusion we've all been taught to believe. The lie that keeps most people trapped in reactive mode their entire lives. We've been conditioned to think that our circumstances create our identity, that we become who we are in response to what happens to us. But the spiritual truth, the actual mechanics of how reality operates, is precisely the opposite. Your identity defines how the outer world behaves with you. Your identity is the cause and circumstances. Every single thing you're experiencing right now are the effect, not the other way around. This goes against everything conventional thinking teaches, against every message you've absorbed from society about how life works. But that doesn't make it any less true. When you really absorb this, when you let it sink into your understanding, it's both liberating and terrifying. Liberating, because it means you're not a victim of your circumstances, not at the mercy of random external forces. Terrifying, because it means you're responsible, truly responsible for what you're experiencing. You can't blame bad luck anymore. You can't point to external obstacles and say, "That's why things aren't working." The circumstances are. Simply reflecting back what you've been identifying as at the deepest level. And if you don't like what you're seeing, the answer isn't to fight with the reflection. It's to change what's being reflected. Now, here's where this gets intensely practical, where you can immediately apply this understanding to see why your results have been what they've been. You can say, "I'm going to win 1,000 times." You can repeat it every morning in the mirror. Write it in your journal. Say it before you buy every ticket. But if the underlying emotional tone, that subtle frequency vibrating beneath your words, is saying, "Nothing good ever happens to me," or "I'm just not that lucky," guess which message is actually being heard and responded to by the universe, not your words. Your tone, that emotional frequency, is the real communication, the actual signal you're broadcasting. And it's infinitely more powerful than any words you could speak. This is why affirmations fail for so many people. They're speaking one thing while feeling another. And the feeling, the emotional tone always wins. Always. The universe doesn't have ears that hear your words. It has a sensitivity to vibration, to frequency, to the emotional tone you're consistently emitting. And that tone is determined by your identity. When your identity is "I'm unlucky," The tone beneath every hopeful statement you make carries that frequency of unluckiness, and that's what gets reflected back to you in your experiences for results to change in any real lasting way. The tone has to change first, and tone doesn't change through effort or repetition. Tone changes when identity changes, when you fundamentally shift who you understand yourself to be. Think about someone you know who just seems to have things work out for them naturally. Pay attention to their tone. It's not forced optimism or fake positivity. It's just this natural expectation that things will be fine, that they'll figure it out, that it'll work in their favor. That tone comes from an identity that says, I'm someone things work out for. And reality has no choice but to confirm that belief over and over again. If you're starting to recognize the tone you've been broadcasting beneath your words, write in the comments. My tone is changing with my identity. Identity doesn't need evidence to exist. And this might be the single most important thing you learn from this entire conversation. Most people have it completely backwards. They're waiting to see results in their external world before they allow themselves to adopt a new identity. They're saying, show me the money first, then I'll believe I'm prosperous. Or, let me win first, then I'll see myself as a winner. But that's like waiting for your mirror to smile before you smile. It's fundamentally backwards. Evidence doesn't create identity. Identity creates evidence. Always, without exception, evidence follows identity, never precedes it. You must become internally first. You must shift who you understand yourself to be in the privacy of your own consciousness. And then the external world has no choice but to confirm and reflect what you've already decided about yourself. This is the leap that most people never take because it requires faith in a way that feels uncomfortable, even risky. It requires you to claim an identity before you have proof to declare yourself as something, before the world validates it. But that's exactly the point. That's where your creative power lives, in your willingness to be first, to decide first, to claim your identity first without waiting for permission from external circumstances. The people who transform their lives are always the ones who changed their identity before their circumstances changed, not after. Now look at how divine creative intelligence actually speaks in sacred texts and spiritual teachings. God never says, I will become something. There's no future tense in divine declaration. God says, I am present, absolute, complete, without conditions or qualifications. Not I will be the light, but I am the light. Not I hope to be or I'm working on becoming, but simply I am. And here's the revelation that changes everything. When you use that same language in your own life with genuine conviction, when you say with full belief, I am fortunate, I am favored, I am prosperous, I am a winner, you're speaking from the exact same creative position from which God speaks. You're not imitating or pretending. You're activating the same divine creative principle that exists within you. The power of I am is absolute because it declares present reality. It doesn't negotiate with circumstances or ask for approval from external conditions. It simply is. When you say, I am with true conviction, you're not describing what you hope will happen or what you're trying to become. You're declaring what already is in the only realm where creation actually occurs, in consciousness. And once consciousness has declared something, once you've truly accepted it at that level, the physical world must reorganize itself to match. It's not optional. It's not dependent on luck or timing or external factors. It's law operating with the same reliability as gravity. The difference between someone stuck in lack and someone experiencing abundance isn't that one works harder or is more talented. The difference is in how they speak about themselves both out loud and in that constant internal dialogue. One says, I will be, or I want to be, or someday I'll be, always placing their desired identity in some future that never quite arrives. The other says, I am, claiming their identity now, accepting it as present reality, and watching as the universe confirms that declaration. Through experience after experience, if you're ready to start speaking in present tense identity rather than future tense hoping, write in the comments, I am already what I seek to become. Faith is not what most people think it is. It's not that excited. Emotional state where you're jumping around enthusiastically, pumped up with motivation for a few days until the feeling inevitably fades, and you crash back down to doubt. That's not faith, that's emotional intensity, and it's exhausting to maintain. Real faith is something entirely different. It's psychological settlement. It's that deep, quiet calm that washes over you when something has been truly resolved in your interior world. It's the absence of questions, the absence of that nagging need to keep checking if it's still true. When your mind finally settles on a new identity, when it accepts something as fact rather than possibility, it stops seeking confirmation. It stops scanning your environment for proof. It stops asking, is this really happening? Because the matter is settled, decided, complete. You know this feeling from other areas of your life. Think about something you're absolutely certain about. Something you never question. There's no emotional charge around it. No need to convince yourself. No drama. It just is. That's the quality of real faith. And that's the state you need to cultivate around your identity as someone who wins, someone who attracts abundance, someone life supports. Not excited, hoping but settled, knowing, not temporary enthusiasm, but permanent recognition. The transformation happens in that settlement. In that moment when your consciousness stops debating and simply accepts. Now, when Florence Scovel Shinn talks about imagination, she's not referring to fantasy or idle daydreaming, not suggesting you escape into pleasant thoughts to avoid reality. She's talking about something far more substantial and powerful, the creative activity of consciousness itself. Imagination is literally the workshop where God works before anything manifests in the physical world. It's the invisible place, the hidden dimension where absolutely everything visible is first formed and shaped and prepared for physical expression. Nothing, and I mean nothing, appears in your material reality without first existing in imagination. Not the device you're watching this on, not the building you're in, not the relationships you have, and certainly not the financial wins you're seeking. This means your imagination isn't a passive entertainment system. It's an active construction site where tomorrow's experiences are being built right now, in this moment, based on what you're consistently imagining and accepting as real. Most people use their imagination unconsciously, letting it replay fears, rehearse worst-case scenarios, or loop past disappointments over and over. And then they wonder why those patterns keep showing up in their physical experience. They don't realize they've been using the most powerful creative tool available to human consciousness to build exactly what they don't want. When you start using your imagination deliberately, when you consciously direct it to assume the feeling of your desire fulfilled, to see yourself as the person who already has what you're seeking, you're not wasting time in fantasy. You're actively participating in the only process through which anything has ever been created. You're working in God's workshop, shaping your future with the same creative force that shapes galaxies and orchestrates the perfect complexity of a single living cell. If you're beginning to see your imagination as the powerful creative tool it actually is, write in the comments, "My imagination builds my tomorrow." When you consciously use your imagination, when you deliberately picture yourself holding that winning ticket or receiving that life-changing notification, you're not pretending. You're not playing make-believe like a child. What you're actually doing is selecting a specific reality from among all the available possibilities that exist in the quantum field of potential, and you're agreeing to experience it. It's an act of conscious selection, a deliberate choice. Think of it like standing in front of an infinite menu of possible experiences and pointing to the one you want, saying, "This one I choose. This reality." This is precisely why Florence Scovel Shinn described imagination as God acting in you, because selection from infinite possibility is the fundamental act of divine creation. And when you imagine deliberately, you're wielding that same creative authority. Most people never realize they're making selections constantly through their imagination. They're just doing it unconsciously, choosing by default rather than by design. Every time you replay a fear, every time you imagine something going wrong, you're selecting that possibility and marking it for manifestation. The power is always active. The only question is whether you're directing it or letting it run wild. Here's something that will save you enormous amounts of wasted effort. When you imagine yourself as a lottery winner, when you picture yourself experiencing that abundance, the most important element isn't actually the visual detail. You don't need to see every number clearly. Don't need to visualize every person who congratulates you. Don't need to have perfect clarity on every sensory detail of the moment. What truly matters, what makes imagination effective rather than empty fantasy, is the inner conviction accompanying the image. It's that feeling of certainty, that sense of yes, this is real for me, that breathes life into the mental picture. And here's the surprising part. You don't need emotional fireworks. You don't need to get yourself worked up into an excited frenzy every time you imagine your win. In fact, that kind of intense emotional energy often signals desperation rather than conviction, and desperation repels rather than attracts. What you actually need is quiet acceptance, that calm internal feeling that says, "This is normal for me. This makes sense for someone like me. This is simply what happens in my life." When you imagine from that place of natural acceptance rather than desperate desire, your imagination carries real creative power, because there's no resistance, no internal argument, no part of you fighting against what you're picturing. This is the difference between fantasy and creation. Fantasy is always reaching for something far away, something that feels extraordinary and unlikely. Creation is recognizing something as already belonging to you, as already decided, just waiting to materialize in time. Fantasy feels exciting but unstable. Creation feels calm but certain. One is entertainment, the other is construction. When you catch yourself imagining from a place of "wouldn't it be nice if," or "I hope this happens," gently shift to "this is how it is for me," or "this is what's natural for someone with my identity." That subtle shift in the feeling behind your imagination makes all the difference between spinning your wheels and actually building the bridge to your desire. If you're learning to imagine from acceptance rather than from longing, write in the comments, "I imagine what is, not what might be." Imagination becomes truly powerful, becomes an unstoppable creative force when you use it as an act of identity rather than an act of desire. This distinction is everything. If you're imagining yourself winning the lottery, while you still fundamentally identify as someone who rarely has luck, someone who things don't work out for, the imaginative act dramatically weakens. There's internal conflict, a war between what you're picturing and who you believe yourself to be. And that conflict drains all the creative power from your visualization. It's like trying to drive forward while your emergency brake is engaged. You might move a little, but you're fighting yourself the entire way. But when your imagination aligns completely with your identity, when what you're picturing matches perfectly with who you know yourself to be, it becomes absolutely irresistible. There's no internal friction. No part of you arguing that this is someone like you. The image flows effortlessly because it's coherent with your self-concept. And that coherence is what allows the creative process to operate at full power. This is why the identity work isn't optional, isn't just a nice addition to manifestation practice. It's the foundation that everything else builds upon. Without it, you're just daydreaming. With it, you're literally constructing your future. Now there's a specific feeling that marks the transition from trying to manifest something to actually living in the reality where it's already yours. That feeling is inevitability. The sense of inevitability is the secret that absolutely dissolves all resistance, all doubt, all the obstacles that seemed so solid before. Emotions rise and fall, constantly like waves in the ocean. One day you feel hopeful, the next day discouraged, depending on what you're seeing in your external circumstances. Hope fluctuates wildly based on whether you've had a good day or a bad day, whether you've seen encouraging signs or disappointing setbacks. But inevitability is completely different. Inevitability is constant, stable, unmovable, like a rock sitting calmly at the bottom of the ocean while storms rage on the surface above. When something feels truly inevitable to you, when you reach that place of inner knowing where the outcome is so certain, it's not even worth questioning. Something profound shifts in how you move through the world. You stop asking, "When will this happen?" because the timing stops mattering. It's going to happen regardless. You stop asking, "How will this happen?" because you trust that the path will reveal itself. You simply live as someone for whom this must occur. Someone for whom this outcome is as guaranteed as tomorrow's sunrise. And that way of living, that state of being, communicates itself to the universe far more powerfully than any amount of wishing or hoping or trying ever could. The beautiful thing about inevitability is that it naturally produces the relaxation, the surrender, the non-resistance that allows manifestation to flow. When you're hoping, you're tense, constantly monitoring, checking for progress, worrying if you're doing it right. When you're in inevitability, you're calm, trusting, allowing things to unfold in their perfect timing. One is exhausting, the other is effortless. One resists the natural flow, the other rides it. If you're feeling that sense of inevitability settling into your consciousness right now, write in the comments, "What's mine is already inevitable." True inevitability isn't what most people think it is. It's not. That heightened emotional intensity where you're constantly fired up and excited about your manifestation. It's actually the exact opposite. It's emotional absence. The absence of doubt, constantly corroding your mind. The absence of that desperate urgency that makes you want to force and control every detail. The absence of internal conflict, where one part of you believes while another part keeps questioning and undermining. When you truly feel inevitability about something, when you reach that place of genuine certainty, your entire nervous system relaxes. Your shoulders drop. Your breath deepens. That chronic tension you're carrying finally releases because there's nothing left to fight. Nothing left to prove. Nothing left to worry about. This relaxation is actually the signal your subconscious needs to understand that the matter is resolved, that the decision has been made, that it's now safe to allow the manifestation to flow through. As long as you're tense, as long as there's that grip of anxiety around your desire, you're essentially telling your subconscious that there's still a problem to solve, still a battle to fight. But when you relax into knowing, into that calm, certainty that what's yours is simply making its way to you in perfect timing, your subconscious receives the all-clear signal and begins orchestrating circumstances without your interference. Here's the ultimate truth that ties everything together. The revelation that changes your entire relationship with desire and manifestation. The exact moment a desire is born within you. In that instant when you first recognize, "I want this," it's already fulfilled in consciousness, not partially. Fulfilled, not on its way to being fulfilled, already complete. There's no gap, no distance, no stretch of time between the desire and its fulfillment in God's mind, in divine consciousness, in the realm where all creation actually originates. That perceived gap, that sense of separation between wanting and having, only appears in human consciousness, in our limited perception that experience a thing through the filter of linear time. What this means is profound and liberating. Your work isn't to create something that doesn't exist yet. Your work isn't to convince the universe to give you what you want or to somehow manufacture a reality that isn't there. Your work is simply to align your human consciousness, your beliefs, your assumptions, your identity with what's already true in divine consciousness. It's already done. It's already yours. The lottery win you're seeking, the abundance you desire, the transformation you're after, all of it already exists. In completed form, in the only dimension where creation actually occurs. Your job is to close the gap between your current awareness and that divine awareness. 2. Shift your perception until you're no longer seeing lack, but recognizing the fullness that's always been present. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn taught that manifestation isn't about making things happen. It's about allowing what already is to be revealed. It's not creation. It's recognition. Not building, unveiling. The moment you truly grasp this, the struggle ends. The striving relaxes, And in that relaxation, in that surrender to what already is, everything you've been chasing finally catches up to you. If you're recognizing that what you seek already exists and you're simply aligning with it, write in the comments, "It's already done. I'm just catching up." If you made it all the way here to this very moment, you're not the same person who started this video. Something has shifted in your consciousness. Even if it's subtle, even if you can't fully articulate it yet, that shift is exactly what needed to happen. And it's going to continue unfolding in ways you'll start noticing in your daily life, in your thoughts, in your decisions, in the opportunities that begin appearing seemingly out of nowhere. This is the kind of content I share here regularly. These deeper truths about consciousness, manifestation, and how reality actually works beneath the surface of what we've all been taught. If this resonated with you, if you felt something click into place while listening, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. You'll want to be here for what's coming next, because we're going even deeper into these principles, breaking down exactly how to apply them in every area of your life. Let me know you made it to the end by writing in the comments. This message found me at the perfect time. I read these comments, and there's something powerful about declaring your alignment publicly. It's another way of confirming to yourself and to the universe that you're ready for this shift. And if this video served you, if it opened something up or clarified something that's been confusing, give it a like. That's simple. Action helps this message reach other people who are ready to hear it. People who are searching for exactly what you just discovered. There's another video right here that takes what we just explored and shows you how to apply it in a completely practical way. Click and continue with me over there.